Hey everybody!
Hi, welcome back to Planet in God. We are starting our reading our Gospel Challenge through the new year.
Yep, this is Matthew chapter 1.
Yep.
So, you want to just dive right in? Or?
Yeah, let's get into it. Matthew chapter 1, you should have read it this morning or this afternoon. If not, read along as we talk about it.
Yeah. The first part talks about the genealogy of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
The one thing I pulled out, which I thought was really interesting, was that there were specific women that were pulled in within the genealogy. Tamar, Rahab, and Ruth, and Uriah, and then Mary.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this. What do these women all have in common?
Well, I know that Rahab was a prostitute.
Mm-hmm. Rahab and Tamar were prostitutes. All four of them, Bathsheba, Ruth, Rahab, Tamar, were Gentiles, which is another thing. Bathsheba was caught in adultery. Ruth had some kind of, I think I had in here. Oh yeah, Ruth was a Moabitess, and the Moabites came into existence through Lot having intercourse with his daughters. So they all are related in some way, shape, or form to some sort of sexual sin.
Interesting.
Yes. I thought that was very interesting. So you have a bunch of Gentiles, and they're all related in some way, shape, or form to sin in the genealogy here. One thing that I noticed straight out of the gate was, verse 1, how Matthew opens it up, that this is the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. He talks about showing that Jesus is both. As the son of David, he's the prophetic king, right? The messianic king that's going to follow the lineage of David. And then as the son of Abraham, he's going to be the sacrifice, the satisfying sacrifice for the sins. You notice with Abraham's story, when he goes to take his son, Isaac, on the mountain and sacrifice him, God tells him, no, don't sacrifice your son. I'm going to provide a better sacrifice. And he does at that time with a goat. But here, Jesus being the son of Abraham is going to be that even better sacrifice.
Well, it's also the fulfillment of his covenant, or part of his covenant, right?
Yeah. When we read through the genealogy as a whole, like I said, if you got a journaling Bible or you like to write in your Bible, I want you to do this. Every time you see the father of, I want you to underline it. Because this is a very key turn of events in the genealogy. You have Abraham, the father of Isaac. Isaac, the father of Jacob. Jacob, the father of Judah. Right? And it keeps going down and down until you get to verse 16. Verse 16, we see that change. We see Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called the Christ. That of whom is a change. It's a feminine word in the Greek, pointing to Mary as being the sole mother, that Jesus doesn't have a father figure.
Right, well, like on the earth, right?
On the earth, right. He doesn't have a biological father figure. So this genealogy is the genealogy of Joseph, and it goes through and shows his lineage, how he can be tied back to David and to Abraham, which is a really cool thing to see. And then, like I said, that of whom changes it and just says, hey, yes, this is Joseph's genealogy, but Jesus is not Joseph's biological son. So this genealogy just points to the fact that no matter who you look at, Mary's genealogy or Jesus' genealogy, they all go back to David. They both go back to Abraham.
Right.
Which is very important, especially when one of the key points of this is showing that Jesus is the Messiah, the son of David.
Right.
Another thing that I found really interesting is in verse 11, we have this man's name, Jeconiah. And Jeconiah is a very interesting character because if Jesus had been Joseph's biological son, because Jeconiah is in Joseph's genealogy, he would have been disqualified from being the Messiah. It's very fascinating.
Right, because isn't there like a curse?
Yes.
On his...
Yeah, there's Jeconiah's curse. So there's three main requirements for the Messiah to be the Jewish king. That is that from the southern kingdom, he has to be a descendant of David. From the northern kingdom, he has to be either divinely appointed by God himself or through a prophet. And then thirdly, he cannot be from the lineage of Jeconiah. This is seen in Jeremiah chapter 22, verses 24 through 30, where that curse comes into play. And specifically verse 30, it says, "Thus says the Lord, write this man down as childless, a man who shall not succeed in his days, for none of his offspring shall succeed in sitting in the throne of David and ruling again in Judah." Right? So Jesus has to be a part of that lineage. And that's how he solves that in verse 16 with that "of whom" again. Right? That "of whom" solves that issue, showing that Joseph is not the biological father. Jesus does not have that in his lineage from a bloodline perspective.
Right, right.
Which is really cool and something I found very fascinating. And then that goes into the next section, going through the birth of Christ and how Jesus was prophesied to be born of a virgin.
What you're saying?
Verses 18 through
24?
25 is how I split it up. Yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting with like a Mary and Joseph's betrothal process because you just did that sermon. I mean, it was a while ago now, but where it talks about that, and so it just opened my eyes to thinking and seeing that a little bit differently, because the practice of their betrothal process would have been like that,
right?
Because they were within that region, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
So I thought it was just eye-opening. 19, then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not wanting to make her a public example, was minded to put her away secretly. Noting that Joseph was a just man, because there's a lot of things in here. We don't know that much about Joseph, but I know throughout the first few chapters,
we learn a lot about who Joseph is.
Joseph is a good guy. Like, he was upset with that, obviously Mary was, pregnant, but he was going to put her away secretly, and that's not really what they would have done back then.
No, back then, when something like this was found out, the woman would have been publicly stoned.
Yeah, so he cared for Mary, and I think there was a love there, there was already a love there. Because sometimes I think we read this and we see, they were put together and they didn't love each other. But you can already see that he does care for Mary. Yeah. And there is some kind of a love already there.
Right. It's very fascinating. This whole chapter 1 is very much from Joseph's perspective, right? You have the lineage from Joseph's side. You have the announcement of the virgin birth to Joseph, right? We see Joseph, right? Joseph found out that he was with child. Joseph being a just man, right? Not willing to put Mary to shame. He wants to protect her, right? This is all Joseph's actions. Even though he would have felt betrayed, he still is acting in a just way, just showing how God chose the right couple.
Yeah.
The right two people to raise Jesus, effectively, raise the Messiah.
I also think, too, that, so in verse 21 it says, "And she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins," right? Talking about, when Jesus is older. But this, there's a care there about the sins also.
Right.
Like, in Joseph's mind, there must have been this care about sin. And I think that our world today kind of lacks a little bit of that.
Yeah, there is no care about sin. Right, everyone wants to do their own thing and be their own way.
Sin is not even on their mind. They don't even think they're sinners, or they don't even, you know, but there is, and it's there, and I think for that line to even be said to him, he knew there was a sin problem.
Yep.
So,
and then, the emphasis of this whole chapter, though, is that Joseph is not the biological father.
Yeah.
That's one of the main emphasis.
Well, and Joseph even knows that based on, obviously, he
knew that
did not impregnate her, but like getting that from Jesus, he knew this is divine.
Yep.
It's not, you know, it's not something that she just went out and did, you know?
And then another interesting thing, verse 22 and 23, this is something that we're going to see a lot in the book of Matthew, is that Matthew will mention something that was written about the fulfillment, right, of a prophecy spoken of the prophet. The angel here is telling Joseph this, but Matthew records it, right? All this took place to fulfill, right? One of the key words of this book is fulfill, what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. So Matthew, not explaining who the prophet is, but anticipating you as the reader to know who that is. And then he quotes the prophet, behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, thereby quoting Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. And so one thing that I've done is every time I read, when I'm reading and I see the prophet and then the prophecy, I'm highlighting that, because Matthew does it often, and then I make sure to note down where that prophecy comes from. I thought that is very fascinating, especially in chapters 1, 2, and 3. You see that a lot there.
So going down to 24, where it says, then Joseph, being aroused from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord commanded him, and took to him his wife, and did not know her till she had brought forth her firstborn son, and called his name Jesus. So what I love about this is that Joseph did as the Lord commanded, and there was no hesitancy there. It was true obedience, and I think it's beautiful.
That's definitely something that is hard to find, especially in today's day and age, is true obedience to the word of the Lord. It's something that we see in Joseph, is his obedience to what God has said. It's
a good example for how we as believers should be too.
Exactly.
You know, try to be as obedient right away, not just
not hesitant about it, but you hear the word and then you act on it. And that's what Joseph did. He heard the word from the angel and then he acted on it straight away.
Yeah. So really love that. But anything else?
I think I'm good. That's a wrap.
Yep. So we really enjoyed reading chapter 1 with you guys, and we look to tomorrow when we do chapter 2.
All right. Well, see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.